The British .577 Snider Enfield was a breech-loading rifle. The American Jacob Snider invented the firearm action, and the Snider Enfield was one of the most widely used of the Snider varieties. The British Army adopted it in 1866 as a conversion system for its ubiquitous pattern 1853 Enfield muzzle-loading rifles, and used it until 1874 when the Martini-Henry rifle began to supersede it. The British Indian Army used the Snider Enfield until the end of the 19th century. Design and manufacture. In trials, the Snider pattern 1853 conversions proved both more accurate than original pattern 1853s and much faster firing. A trained soldier could fire 10 aimed rounds per minute with the breech loader, compared with only 3 rounds per minute with the muzzle-loading weapon. From 1866 onwards, the Enfield rifles were converted in large numbers at the Royal Small Arms Factory, RSAF, Enfield, beginning with the initial pattern, the Mark I. The converted rifles received a new breech block/receiver assembly, but retained the original iron barrel, furniture, lock, and hammer. The Mark III rifles were newly made. They featured steel barrels which were so marked, flat-nosed hammers, and a latch-locking breech block instead of the simple integral block lifting tang. The Snider Enfield used a new type of metal-cased cartridge called a boxer cartridge after its designer. The breech block housed a diagonally downward-sloping firing pin struck with a front-action lock-mounted hammer. To operate the weapon, the rifleman cocked the hammer, flipped the block out of the receiver to the right by grasping the left-mounted breech block lever, and then pulled the block back to extract the spent case. There was no ejector, so the firer lifted the case out or, more usually, turned the rifle upside down to allow the case to drop out. Perhaps even more usually, the firer then shook the weapon vigorously to dislodge hot cartridges or those fouled by dust or grime. Service. The Snider first saw action with the British/Indian Army at the Battle of Magdala, Arogi, in Ethiopia on April 10, 1868, against the forces of Tewodros II of Ethiopia. During the battle, the 4th, King's Own, Regiment of Foot alone fired 10,200 rounds. The Snider Enfield served throughout the British Empire, including Cape Colony, India, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, until its gradual phase-out by the Martini-Henry, beginning in 1874. Volunteer and militia forces continued to use it until the late 1880s. It stayed in service with the Indian Army until the mid-1890s, because between the Indian Rebellion of 1857 and 1905 the British kept the Indian Army one weapon generation behind British units. The Indian units received the Martini-Henry when the British adopted the Lee-Met Ford. The Idshahs used large numbers of Snider Enfields against Ibadan during the 16-year-long Yoruba Civil War, 1877 to 1893. Frank Richards, who served on the northwest frontier between 1902 and 1908, records in Old Soldier Sahib that the British Army still used Sniders during that period. Sentries on night duty in camps and cantonments would carry a Snider and buckshot cartridges. Should tribesmen try to get into the camp to steal rifles, the buckshot would give the sentries a better chance of hitting the thief, and unlike a .303 round, would be less likely to wound or kill a comrade should the sentry miss. The Snider was notably powerful. Rudyard Kipling gave a graphic depiction of its effect in his poem, The Grave of the Hundred Head. A Snider squibbed in the jungle. Somebody laughed and fled. And the men of the first shikaris picked up their subaltern dead, with a big blue mark in his forehead, and the back blown out of his head. Variants. The Snider Enfield was produced in several variants. The most commonly encountered variants were the rifled musket or long rifle, the short rifle, and the cavalry and artillery carbines. The long rifle has a 36.5 inches, 93 centimeters, barrel and 3 barrel bands. Its total length, without bayonet, is 54.25 inches, 137.8 centimeters, in length, longer than most rifles of the time. It was issued to line infantry and has 3-groove rifling with one turn in 78 inches, 200 centimeters. The short rifle has a 30.5 inches, 77 centimeters, barrel and 2 barrel bands with iron furniture. This variant was issued to sergeants of line infantry and rifle units. It has 5-groove rifling with one turn in 48 inches, 120 centimeters. The cavalry carbine is half-stocked and has only one barrel band. It has a 19.5 inches, 50 centimeters, barrel, with the same rifling as the short rifle. The artillery carbine has a 21.25 inches, 54.0 centimeters, barrel with a full stock and 2 barrel bands, and the same rifling as the short rifle and cavalry carbine. The Snider was the subject of substantial imitation, in both approved and questionable forms, including the Nepalese Snider, which was a nearly exact copy, the Dutch Snider, Danish naval Snider, and the unauthorized adaptations of the French tabatiere and Russian krenke. There were also trade pattern Snider Enfields, being Snider Enfields made for private purchase by various English gunmakers. These were often intended for sale to members of volunteer military units, or simply to anyone who might wish to purchase a rifle. Use today. Enthusiasts still use these rifles today, with the number in circulation boosted by the acquisition by Atlanta Cutlery and International Military Antiques of a vast quantity of antique weapons held in the Royal Nepalese Armoury in the Lagan Sile Kina Palace for over a century. Ammunition is reloaded into either modern production .577 Snider cases, or reformed 24-gauge brass shotgun shells. Black powder or modern black powder substitutes are used. The HCRA in Halifax does live fire demonstrations daily in the Halifax Citadel, fire blanks many times a day, while they are also in possession of around 60 of these rifles. In addition, the FHG at Fort Henry also uses the various variants of this weapon for their reenactments. Type Service Rifle. Place of origin United Kingdom. Service history. In service 1867–1901. Used by United Kingdom, Royal Irish Constabulary, Siam, Japan, Ottoman Empire, Kingdom of Portugal, Khedivate of Egypt, Northwest Mounted Police, Wars, British Colonial Wars, Anglo-Ashanti Wars, New Zealand Wars, Fenian Raids, 1868 Expedition to Abyssinia, Ha Wars, Boshin War, Red River Rebellion, Russo-Turkish War, 1877–78, Anglo-Zulu War, First Boer War, Northwest Rebellion, World War I. Production history. Designer RSAF Enfield. Designed 1860. Manufacturer RSAF Enfield. Produced 1866–1880s. No built 870,000. Variants: long rifle, short rifle, engineer's carbine, cavalry carbine, artillery carbine, yeomanry carbine, naval rifle, Royal Irish Constabulary carbine. Specifications. Weight 8 pounds 9 ounces, 3.8 kilograms, unloaded. Length 49.25 in, 1250 mm. Cartridge .577 Snider. Caliber 0.577 in, 14.7 mm. Action side hinged breech block. Rate of fire 10 rounds/minute. Muzzle velocity 1250 feet/s, original black powder load. Effective firing range 600 yd, 550 m. Maximum firing range 2000 yd, 1800 m. Feed system single shot. Sights sliding ramp rear sights, fixed post front sights.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.